you gonna call? If you don't know the answer to that question, what's it been like living under a rock for the past 40 years? Obviously, the exorcist is who you're gonna call. Just swap out the religious iconography and black robes for unlicensed nuclear accelerators and brown jumpsuits. In this video, we'll explore the mythological origins of the modern-day Ghostbusters. One of the most iconic pop franchises mixing horror, science fiction, comedy, and the paranormal, the Ghostbusters franchise has delighted audiences for years, literally all the way up until 2016. Now there's a new Ghostbusters out, Frozen Empire, and I hear it's got a chilly reception, as in nobody walked out of the theater saying, "Ice to see a new Ghostbusters movie." They just gave it a cold shoulder. They tried to keep it cool. Folk wouldn't even go to see it if the tickets were freeze, and other cold-related puns. I guess people are just getting tired of superhero movies. But this channel isn't about movies, it's about video games. Ghostbusters is so popular that over the course of generations, the IP has spawned numerous games, starting with 1984's Ghostbusters on Commodore 64. Whether you like your Ghostbusters in 8-bit, 16-bit, on mobile, or on pachinko, or slimed with Uncanny Valley, there are many titles to choose from. Did you know that the accurately named Ghostbusters the Video Game, written by Dan Aykroyd and the late comedic genius Harold Ramis, not only saw several original actors reprise their roles alongside Ernie Hudson and Bill Murray, but Aykroyd had this to say.
I've seen work on the video game, I've watched it progress. My rap now to people is this is essentially the third movie.
This was Ramis' last performance as Egon Spangler. It's undoubtedly the most significant of the Ghostbusters video games for this and many other reasons. In it, players take the role of the Rookie, a new recruit who tags along with the OGs for a sampling of collateral damage and a few familiar faces. The goal, of course, is to bust ghosts, it's in the title, which means capturing, then storing them in their totally safe and not at all easy to shut down spectral storing unit. While the Ghostbusters franchise is all about science, pseudoscience, and paranormal investigation, I found myself wondering what the ancient analog is for these characters. I joked about exorcism earlier, but that's not quite the same thing. Neither is spirit photography, but I'm going to mention it anyway. Capturing a ghost with proton streams, which, by the way, you should never ever cross unless you're fighting a Class 7 deity of destruction like Gozer the Gozerian, isn't quite like capturing a ghost on camera. While the bilge water that collects at the bottom of streaming services is rife with ghost hunting series in which no scientific discoveries are made and every situation is contrived and poorly acted, the era of spirit photography began in the late 19th century, where it quickly proved to be worthy of the streaming service shows it came to inspire. The goal of a ghost photograph was to capture an apparition, typically a family member related to a person in the portrait, as a means of connecting the living with the dead. The American Civil War had ended in 1865, claiming the lives of roughly 1 million people. In the wake of war and disease, it's understandable that mourning families would try anything to have even just a glimpse of their dead family member again. Enter the charlatans, always willing to earn some coin off of grief. Businessmen like William Mumler raked in the cash by taking family portraits supposedly with dead people, playing with long exposure to create wispy wraiths and floating phantoms. As the technology of photography developed and more people got their hands on cameras, new methods for conjuring a ghost appeared. You may be a dangled bit of string, a blot of lens flare, a crumb of dust, a fragment of an overexposed parlor trick. Yes, there's more of photo than of phantom about you. All this resulted in some pretty intriguing photographs, which were eventually proven to be fakes. All it took was the help of the media. Mumler's original spirit pic was of his own cousin, 12 years in the grave. He even faked a picture of Abraham Lincoln photobombing Mrs. Lincoln. The firestorm of headlines did their own part to make Mumler famous, the P.T. Barnum of spirit photography. Too bad this eventually resulted in a trial in which Mumler was accused of fraud. The real P.T. Barnum actually testified against him.
The most damning moments in the trial came when a deliberately bogus photograph was presented to demonstrate just how easy it was to make one of Mumler's spirit images. It was Barnum's coup de grace and featured himself with the ghost of Abraham Lincoln. It appeared Mumler was ghost-busted. BBC.
Despite being shown for what he really was, spirit photography persisted. Ghost tourism today remains a popular industry with various haunts across the world, and visitors can even examine supposed ghost photos themselves. Are they real? Is this evidence of life after death? Can the souls of our loved ones really speak to us from the great beyond? Doesn't matter, they got your money anyway. Now, that doesn't mean that every single piece of evidence or account about ghosts is false, fraud, or made up somehow. The universe is a big and mysterious place. Take the Tao, for example, a word for the underlying natural order of the universe stemming from Taoism, an ancient Chinese religion and philosophy emphasizing balance and dualism.
He who controls others may be powerful, but he who has mastered himself is mightier still.
It's surprisingly difficult to find concrete information about some of the Taoist beliefs of yestermillennium. Taoism may be officially recognized in China today, but historically, that wasn't always the case. I'm seeing an analogy here with Hawaiian history, and if you haven't watched our previous videos on that topic, I encourage you to do so. However, I did manage to find an example of Taoist Ghostbusters. The Yin-Shan sorcery lineage, a Taoist sect, practiced a kind of magic that used Fulu talismans, pieces of paper with Chinese script on them that could be used to various effect. Ghosts manipulated by this sect were from the negative realms. Yin-Shan apparently used their arts for purposes such as disturbance, breaking up marriages, or enacting revenge. Catching and controlling a ghost could go beyond cleansing or exorcising an area. Some sorcerers might attempt to capture ghosts for insidious reasons. This was done without proton packs, but through the use of Fulu such as these, Taoist talismans of the Yin-Shan sect for luring ghosts and then trapping them in a bottle or jar. Another talisman would be used to seal the container to prevent the specter from spiriting away and escaping. Again, much of this information is pretty vague, and there's historical reason for that. But we even have the name of a Chinese Ghostbuster. Zhong Kui is now a revered trapper of evil spirits, who it said was born with a panther-like head, unkempt hair, bulbous eyes, an iron face, and whiskers. In the year 712, he was studying to take the imperial civil examination and excelled, but his ugliness got him in trouble. One of the imperial servants, offended by Zhong Kui's visage, gave a nasty report to the emperor. As a result, Zhong Kui could not receive the top score in his exams, denied the championship because of his looks. Crushed and enraged, he beat his brow against the palace walls until he died. Shocked and filled with regret, the imperial court passed an edict that granted the dead man the title of Demon Queller and #1 scholar. A later emperor dreamt of Zhong Kui vanquishing evil spirits that had made the emperor ill, and so an imperial commission painted the figure of a large bearded man with a huge sword. So the legend of Zhong Kui was established. In the folklore to come, he's often depicted catching hungry ghosts or preventing them from harassing the living. Symbolically, these stories and artistic works are meant to represent good fortune and avoiding disaster, and Zhong Kui is remembered as a Taoist deity and folk hero across Asia, where he is known as the King of Ghosts, a demon slayer, a Ghostbuster. Whether with talismans, photographs, or an ecto-containment system, the idea of catching a spirit and thereby commanding undeniable proof of the existence of ghosts has been a tantalizing notion for thousands of years. Part of why these stories are so plentiful and why they persist is because we are all curious about and have our opinions on what happens after we die, in our own ways sifting through generational stories to arrive at some truth. But what do you think? It's okay to wonder. Even Thomas Edison did. When he wasn't taking credit for things he didn't invent or badgering Nikola Tesla, he took the time to experiment with the idea of a phone that could call the dead. Yes, the Edison Spirit Phone. Maybe instead of a light bulb, he should have said,
I never once failed at making a spirit phone. I just found out 99 ways not to make one.
But that is a story for another day.